Hello, hello, my lovely readers. Can you believe it? We made it into 2021. Goodbye, 2020, and hopefully the end of the horrible stuff that happened that year. Oh my goodness, there was too many things that happened that were bad in 2020, so I'm glad to see it go. We're in a new year. This is going to be a good year. I am hoping, praying, fingers, toes, eyes, everything's crossed that we are done with the negativity and that this year is going to be a positive year for all of us. So with that said, we are starting fresh in the new year with our next book. So for those of you who followed along, we finished book 1 last weekend, and I put up a poll on my private group on Facebook, and people voted almost, it was a 50-50 split between this and another book series. But because we've already started on this one, I kind of gave a little extra weight to this book. So we're going to read book 2 in the Agents of A.S.S.E.T series. And the Agents of A.S.S.E.T series is a 4-book series. So I don't know if you can kind of see behind me, but we read book 1, and now we're on book 2, A Taste of Your Own Magic. And then back here, you can see there are 2 other books. So right now, this is a 4-book series. I do have some more books planned. I'm actually halfway done with book 5. And I had originally planned for it to be 6 books. So expect that there's going to be 2 more books that come out in this series. When they come out, I can't quite tell you because I don't know yet. It depends on how fast I can get them written. But there are planned 6 books in this series. 4 of them are done and available right now. And we are going to read book 2 today. Well, we're going to start reading book 2 today. So let's jump on in. Oh, I love this one's opening. All right, here we go. Chapter 1. Game night was supposed to be fun. Unfortunately, no one sitting around the small table in her kitchen had gotten that memo. Rage simmered below the congenial smiles, passing like an infectious disease with the rotation of the dice. Barely 9 o'clock, and all the temper tantrums and interruptions had worn Sage's nerves as thin as the cards she held in her hand. Dice clattered against wood. Mournful howls followed. Another defeat. Outside her tiny kitchen window, silence beckoned, still and calm. Not even a breeze dared disturb the sleeping trees. A picture-perfect summer evening, just beyond her reach. Peace that sharply contrasted with the raised voices and empty threats flying around the room where Sage sat waiting for her turn to enter the fray. "You're stunned for 2 rounds." Excuse me. "You're stunned for 2 rounds, Matt," Josh called from behind his Game Master's divider. Or wait, hold on a moment. Do you remember the number on the red die? It shouldn't take a degree in calculus to figure out if a player failed an attempted attack, but this wasn't their normal dungeon crawl. Did I skip a page? Julie had already scooped up the dice to take her turn, a blessing in disguise that prevented any further argument over what number the die had landed on. "Forget it. I'm stunned. Let's just keep going." Matt's tone carried a raw edge that failed to mask his annoyance that he was desperate to hide. He was more he was more than partially to blame for I can read, I promise, for subjecting them. Yeah, that's never changing. I'm going to constantly flub. That just happens. Anyways, back to the story. He was more than partially to blame for subjecting them to this hellish fantasy land. His boyfriend, Josh, had commanded all of their fate as game master. Matt could have taken one for the team and said no when Josh had demanded they all play this new game. But love makes people do stupid things. "Coward," Sage groaned and sank lower in her chair, wishing that she possessed the magic to melt into a puddle under the table and slither away. If only. Magic or not, her turn to roll the dice would come soon enough. Death might be her only way out. Julie took her turn, whooping and cheering as she successfully snuck past the black mage. The dice landed like a judge's gavel in front of Sage. If she played her cards right, she might be pardoned. She took her deck in hand, spotting a winning combination, and a smile etched its way across her face. Luck, at least for the moment, had chosen to be on her side. It's hero time. She laid her playable cards on the table before taking her roll. "Does the black mage have any last words?" "You can't use that." Josh pounced with the speed of a cat before the dice hit the wood. She ground her teeth audibly when Josh scrutinized her cards. You need divine aura to protect you against the mage's attack. He shoved the cards back towards her. I have magical immunity in my abilities. Her temper on a hair trigger, Sage teetered at the edge of a self-destructive rage quit that might end the game night forever. If he would just let her use the cards she'd chosen. But no, another damn interruption. Another look at the rulebook. At this rate, they'd all die of natural causes before reaching the main boss. No one has magical immunity. The moment the words left his lips, Josh ducked behind the flimsy shield of his Game Master's folder. Wouldn't protect him. Not from the angry mob staring at the top of his head. Sage might have been his latest target, but she was far from his first. All the others around the table were shooting murderous glares his way. Nearly every turn had necessitated the same pause to check the rules. The Game Master controlled the fates of everyone around the table, but clearly, Josh hadn't bothered to study before subjecting them to this indie dungeon crawler, a game that hadn't even passed the crowdfunding phase of production. Magical immunity is an innate ability, Sage argued, slamming her remaining cards down on the table. I don't need to use divine aura if my character already has a natural defense. Who has magical immunity? Matt cut in sharply, targeting Sage with his anger. Where does it say that on your character sheet? His words were more accusing than inquisitive, and as soon as Sage realized what he'd implied, embarrassment replaced the rage that she'd been ready to unleash. Confusing fantasy and reality, she'd nearly let her secret slip. Among all those she counted as friends, Matt alone knew that Sage was part of a magical lineage as old as time itself. The Terras had once been members of the three magical races, but when the Great Mother chose them as her soldiers and guardians of magical law, their active powers had been exchanged for the innate magical immunity. Short of gods themselves coming down to strike her, Sage felt certain she would never need to fear a Shadowrunner's deadly mist or an arc of conjured lightning from ethereal pixie. Fae, otherkin, fair folk, whatever name they chose to go by, they couldn't harm her with their power. But, just like the rulebooks of all the games that she played, there must always be balance. Sage's gift negated any magic she might hope to conjure for good or evil. Characters can't be too powerful. Had she been raised to know all of this, keeping this secret wouldn't be an issue. But Sage had only recently learned about her special lineage, an inheritance passed down with the death of her mother. All at once, magic bled like an open wound into every part of her life, and with the veil lifted, she saw the truth of what lurked in the shadows and peeked behind the masks that magical creatures wore. A crash course that had left Sage's head spinning as she questioned everything she'd ever known. She opened her mouth to reply to Matt, but no words came. What explanation could she give to the others now that were glaring at her? Interruption number... whatever. It was her fault. Josh lifted his head behind the shield of his GM folder, impatience etching deep lines across his forehead. Awkward silence hung like a fog in the air, and her mind went blank. Sage had no explanation for her near slip as she gave up the pretense of searching her character sheet. I guess I just didn't add it? Whoops. Julie pushed back from the table. Her chair scraped across the floor like nails on a chalkboard, drawing attention away from Sage. Since we're on a break again, anyone want a beer? Julie helped herself to the fridge. Matt's annoyance deflated into exhaustion. Sage could see it in his eyes, the desperate pleading for the game to either start going somewhere or just end completely. Cheating isn't going to get us through this raid. He held the red die in his hand. Divine aura. Throw down the spell and roll for it. Sage pulled the card from her stack and laid it on the hand-drawn map next to her character's token. She rolled the 20-sided die and closed her eyes, praying for a 10 or better. 2, Josh called from behind his GM folder. Damn it, Sage yelled. Your shield spell failed. Josh pulled up a page as he rolled his own blue die, and I rolled an 11, so looks like you're dead. Had to go up against the black mage, didn't you? Julie scoffed as she returned to her seat, beer in hand. You know me. Charge in, guns blazing. Sage secretly prayed that her mistake had actually taken her out of the game completely. How long do I have to wait for a resurrection spell? Josh shuffled more pages behind his shield. All she could see of him was the top of his head and those long auburn locks that Matt adored. First team to defend or safely flee from the black mage. Yeah, you just pissed him off. So if they can do it, it'll be another turn while you wait for mana regeneration. So it looks like you're up for now. Sage threw her cards into the pile at the center of the table. She'd have to draw new cards if her character was ever revived. Sorry, she half-heartedly replied. Relax, guys. Matt tapped the red die on the table, calling the group to order. Head in the game. See if we can get through this one. Sage walked away from the table and grabbed a beer, more out of habit. Since inheriting her mother's neutrality, she found that alcohol no longer worked its magic to dull her senses, but it did provide a socially acceptable reason for her to leave the table. The game ended before she finished her drink. Great time, guys. Julie looked more relieved than annoyed as she grabbed a few bottles on her way out the door. Keep the beer flowing, and I'll see you next week. Josh kissed Matt goodbye, but didn't bother to acknowledge Sage as he packed up to leave. He could be angry with her if he wanted. The way she saw it, she'd done them all a favor, sacrificing herself for the greater good of all their sanity. They would never play that game again. Sage picked up the empty bottles and cleared out the bowls of popcorn and pretzels that had been strewn about the living room. Where was your head tonight? Matt asked as he began loading the dishwasher. Knew this was coming, Sage groaned. You're damn straight. We could have beat that mage had you not gone all Leroy Jenkins with your magical immunity. All we had to do was sneak past him. Sorry. She closed the lid on the trash can. It's just a game. And your magical immunity? Matt replied back with a passive-aggressive slam of his mug down in the sink. I don't have the patience for a fight right now, Sage sighed. We still talking about the game? Matt turned on her, his anger abating with each second as he stared. Are you ready to tell me this big secret you've been holding on to? Not sure what you mean, Sage shrugged. The A.S.S.E.T agency? Matt threw the words at her like an insult. I don't want to go there. Sage's hand found the tree-shaped pendant around her neck, as if drawn to it by the mere mention of the agency. I know it's eating you up inside. Matt had the dad voice down pat, making Sage want to fight back with teenage angst. You can't bottle this up. Tell me what's going on. Being what I am? Sage struggled to get the words out as a knot formed in her throat. It was bad enough that she'd told Matt about being a Terra. He'd taken that well enough, but she kept the job offer quiet, knowing that might tip the scales in what he can handle. Sage had only barely digested this massive helping of magical mumbo-jumbo she'd been force-fed over the last week. One last little morsel stuck in her throat, refusing to go down. This was her life now. If she accepted Ava's offer to become an agent with A.S.S.E.T, as her lineage dictated, that meant the drama that she'd just endured with the death of her mother would become business as usual. If she didn't take the job, magic would still be there, and she'd be left as a silent witness to all the devastating effects of its misuse without any resources to stop it. My people... Oh, already starting with the my people thing. This must be serious. Matt set down the soap and wiped his hands on the dish rag. Spill it. Stop. Don't make fun of me. I'm trying to find the best way to say this. Well, out with it. When have we ever kept secrets? My condition isn't just about seeing beyond the veil of magic. It comes with a job offer. How's that? A muscle at the corner of Matt's lip twitched. Didn't you tell Mark you could never work for the company that killed your mom? That was then, before I understood the reasons. And Mark doesn't run the Vegas office. What exactly does that mean? My people? Sage glared at Matt, daring him to taunt her again. When he didn't, she continued. We're made for this type of work because we aren't affected by normal magic. Sounds like you've decided to accept the job. Matt's shoulders slumped. I should. I know it, but I don't. Sage groaned. This is a really serious decision. You need someone to push you, or you'll sit here and waffle about it forever. Normally I would, but, Matt sighed, they killed your mom. Sage clutched at her necklace. Not exactly. I mean, working there, yeah, it's dangerous. You said it. Not me, Matt agreed. But it's what I was made for, and I should honor my mother's sacrifice. By taking on a dangerous mission that could get you killed? I could get hit by a bus walking to the pub. Only you'd probably walk away from that. He pointed a finger at her like an accusation. I, however, would be dead. Exactly. I'm kind of bulletproof. She looked up, meeting his eyes, desperate for encouragement. Deep down, she knew what she had to do, but without the nod from her best friend, she just couldn't make the leap. Matt's nostrils flared with each breath. His eyes revealed the struggle behind his silence. Then, finally, he replied, "You're built for this life. With all that innate magical immunity." Oh, he really knew how to rub salt in the wound. Sage hung her head in shame. "Sorry, I forgot. You nearly let that one slip." Matt surprised her with laughter. "Remind me never to let you be my secret keeper. Loose lips sink ships." "I got nothing." Sage tried to fight the smile blooming across her face. Damn him and his super cute boyfriend, too. All the good ones were gay or taken. In this case, both. Double whammy. "Look, I want you to be safe, and I want you to do what you were meant to do. I'm not going to say I like you working there, but..." He clenched his fist at his side and released another heavy sigh. "I think if you continue training with Devin, you'll probably be able to handle whatever A.S.S.E.T throws at you." She hadn't been back to Devin's gym since the day she'd been forced to kill Rena, nor had she planned to. But Matt had a point. She did need more training, and Devin was the best in the city. They don't by any chance offer office positions, do they? Matt waggled an eyebrow at her. She cringed, hissing as if the words burned her. Working for A.S.S.E.T Director Ava Masters as an assistant was 10 times more deadly than field work. I'd take on a whole coven of vampires again if that meant avoiding any clerical work under Queen High Bitch herself. Maybe that's what it'll take to get you to make a decision. Do or do not. There is no, okay. Sage stopped him before he went full Yoda. "I've made up my mind. I'm going to go down there tomorrow. Be warned. If you join, you will have to tell Josh." He helped her to make the decision, but by the sounds of his reply, he wasn't too happy with her for it. I can't keep secrets from my man, especially when you come home looking like you've been beaten within an inch of your life." "Jeez, I haven't even committed to it yet. I just said I'd go down there to talk. This deal is getting worse with each passing moment." "Pray I don't alter it further." Matt's Vader was much stronger than his Yoda. Sage went to laugh at his impression, but a sigh came out instead. "That's what I'm afraid of. For now, just tell him I'm working for a private investigation firm that takes on special cases." "Only if you promise me one thing." Matt's tone turned serious again. "Anything." He arched an eyebrow sharply at her. "I will hold you to it." "Well, I guess I better know what else I'm signing up for." "Don't let your work follow you home. This apartment needs to be our place of normalcy." Sage crossed herself and held up a Girl Scout salute. "I solemnly swear that..." "I mean it, Sage." "I'll do my best," she answered truthfully. "I don't want work invading our happy home either." I'm going to jump into Chapter 2 because Chapter 2 is actually kind of short. Chapter 2. Every time she thought of signing on the dotted line and becoming a full-fledged A.S.S.E.T agent, Sage's mind replayed the horrible moment she'd come face to face with the dismembered head of her mother. Matt couldn't truly understand the dangers that came with working for A.S.S.E.T, or he would never have helped her to make the decision. With or without innate magical neutrality, being an agent meant facing all the dangers of the magical world, including losing oneself. What had happened to her mom could just as easily be her fate. If ever an agent went dark, it was the duty of the others at A.S.S.E.T to end their suffering. Gray had done his job without hesitation. Miranda couldn't have been saved, no matter how much Sage had wished it. And though the memory still haunted her, she no longer blamed Gray. Dealing the deadly blow that ended his mother's suffering had been a mercy, but that sobering memory would be forever a reminder of the truth. Working for the anonymous Supernatural Security and Elimination Task Force was dangerous business. Immortality is a lie. But as the years pass with little effect, those who buy into that lie lose their fear of death. It becomes a joke, and the punchline is, only the gods live forever. Everyone else has an expiration date. Some reach theirs faster, and others, like her mom, are helped along by the careers that they choose. Sage took the night air as she walked around her apartment complex. For all the reasons she'd come up with to avoid A.S.S.E.T, none compared to the sense of duty she felt. She reached for a necklace, a silver pendant shaped like the tree of life, the symbol of her people. She bore the same mark on her left wrist, originally thinking it a birthmark. Little had she known it was the sign of her destiny. To be a Terra was an honor, and like the branches of the great tree, their family lines stretched out into hundreds of directions, covering the world and protecting it from dangerous magic. Sage's inheritance, the necklace her mother had given her, contained a single seed from the fruit of the tree of life, one of the most powerful magical artifacts in the known world. It was only because of her innate magical neutrality that she could even wear the damn thing. Anyone with magical blood would be sucked dry of their essence if they touched it. A weapon of magical destruction in all but a true Terra's hands. War had nearly broken out when the seed had gone missing. Protecting it had cost her mother's life. And now that Sage had become the guardian and the secret keeper, no one could know that she had it, not even Matt. A burden she felt far too young to have to bear, and at the same time, Sage knew that she had to rise to the challenge. She was a Terra. Time to stop being a baby. This is your destiny. Embrace it. Her mother's voice echoed in the back of her mind, equal part accusing and caring, the tone that never failed to break Sage's stubbornness. Mom could throw guilt better than an Olympian with a javelin. Whether it had truly been Miranda speaking to her from beyond the grave or just the manifestation of her subconscious, knowing how to push her buttons, the decision was no longer up for debate. You look like you could use a drink. An unfamiliar male voice called out to her. As many times as she'd been snuck up on by vampires, she should have been used to surprises. But, deep as she had been in thought, Sage had failed to pay attention to the shadows. She frantically turned around to locate the voice's owner. A dark figure lurked under the stairs leading to a second-story apartment. His face half concealed, all she could make out were a pair of silver eyes glowing like a beacon. Enchanting as if possessing their own light, his eyes instantly gave away his magical nature. I've never seen such a pout before. Someone run over your favorite pet or something? The man flicked at the cigarette in his hand, emitting a miniature explosion of hot ash that faded before it hit the ground. Nah, long night, I'm fine. Her, oh shit, there's a dude lurking in the shadows in the middle of the night senses were tingling. She casually reached a hand down to the knife that she kept folded in her pocket, just in case. Didn't mean to surprise you. He slipped out from under the stairs into the porch light of the lower level apartment. Holding his hands out in plain sight as if to show her he wasn't a creeper, he made all the right motions to appear non-threatening. We're having a party upstairs. Kind of, housewarming? Haven't met too many people in the new neighborhood. His gesture wasn't lost on her, though she kept her hands firmly grasping the knife. Under the path lighting, he appeared to be about her age. If she had to guess, maybe early 20s. But the shaggy beginnings of a beard masked his features enough to make accuracy impossible. How do you know I'm a neighbor? Sage asked, with a little more attitude than she'd intended. Definitely not a local, new to the apartment complex. She held on to the Cliff's notes of the conversation to recall them later. Man, I'm just having all kinds of fun reading today. Lucky guess, I mean. Most people here have to have a key after hours, right? His smile didn't look forced. No twitching muscles, no clenched jaw. Right, smart. Sage hated small talk. Her mind was too busy with the mystery of his magical type to move the conversation forward. She inspected him slowly, staring at his face. His teeth were normal, though not well taken care of. After her first failed encounter with the vampire Zack, Sage remembered to always check the teeth. The guy checks out, definitely not a vampire, but the silver eyes clearly placed him in the magical creature category. You can never be too sure about people you meet after hours. Sorry, that was a bit forward. Let me start over. He flicked away his cigarette and extended his hand as he walked over. My name's Luke. She couldn't detect a specific accent to give him away, but his attitude held the casual, easygoing feel of someone from the South, though the chin patch of a beard attached to a thin mustache gave him a distinctly Hollywood trendiness that suggested otherwise. No ring on the finger, not married, but he did say we're having a party, probably not single, so there should be more people like him in the apartment. Dark as night, his hair fell around his head in long layers, creating a stunning contrast with his silver eyes. She'd seen that color before, and it took her brain a few moments to run through all the faces she'd seen recently. Then it struck her. Devin had a similar color eye. But this Luke, his eyes reflected the light, kind of like a demonic cat. Definitely magical. Ogre? No. Devin's muscles had muscles, and this guy looked more like a skinny hipster in comparison. Troll? No, she'd seen through their glamour. Though both of his ears were pierced with enlarged hoops big enough to see through, they were still normal ears. And even in the light, she could see his skin wasn't green. Sage realized she'd been standing silent for too long to avoid awkwardness. Sage, she finally managed to coordinate her voice and thoughts. Being a teensy bit more knowledgeable of the magical world would have come in handy at that point. Should she take his hand or not? So far, most of the creatures she'd met have been okay, but there were a few that she wouldn't want to touch any part of her magical immunity or not. But short of being rude, Sage decided to reach out and meet Luke's outstretched hand. His eyes instantly sank below her neckline. Knowing where they were headed, Sage held her breath for the reaction. Her mark was proudly on display, like a neon sign for those in the magical community. Everyone knew that meant Terra. As expected, the recognition was there in his eyes as he met her hand. She let her eyes drop as well, taking a peek at his arms for markings that might clue her into his magical type. He had an impressive sleeve of tribal flame tattoos reaching from his wrist all the way to his elbow, but where her birthmark was static, his tattoos were alive, in constant motion. As if they were burning silently, the flames gently licked up his elbows. She fought the urge to pull back in shock and reveal her ignorance. Marks like his had to be as notorious in the magical community as hers. Nice. Good to know we got A.S.S.E.T in the neighborhood. He gave her hand a quick businesslike pump and let it go. Always makes you feel safe. She took the opportunity to play off his admitted newness to the area. When did you move in? Today, actually. Luke had the type of smile that appeared without effort, like resting bitch face, but in reverse. She wondered if he had to work at pouting or looking angry. Shadowrunner? No, couldn't be. He'd remained fully formed the entire time she'd been watching him. She'd figure him out, eventually, without asking. His tattoos demanded admiration, though. She could hardly stop herself from looking at them. Damn, they were gorgeous. She searched for something else to say just to move the conversation along and came up short. Just popped right in, I imagine. More like commanded to move here by my, mate. He chuckled nervously. But I couldn't have wished for an easier move. His words sounded as if they carried a double meaning, but the joke flew right over her head. She was right about one thing. He wasn't single. Damn. He was cute, whatever he was. Sage grinned stupidly, not sure if she should laugh at his attempted joke or not. Silence never failed to create awkwardness. Luke waggled his finger like a magician. You know, 'cause I'm a djinn. Right, she nodded casually, hoping to hide her ignorance. He might as well have called himself a Martian. A djinn? That conjured about the same image in her mind. She'd make damn sure to look him up when she made it back to her apartment. Well, welcome to the neighborhood. You sure you don't want to come up and have a beer or something? We got pizza, too. The offer sounded sincere enough. There was no denying that, but embarrassment trumped spending more time with the guy who caused it. Brain check? Sage masked her unease with a neutral tone. Got an early day tomorrow at the office. Pride, you guys are always busy. His expression faded. Keep protecting and serving. You know it. Sage snapped her fingers and pointed at Luke as if firing a pair of 6-shooters at him, and instantly regretted the move. Embarrassment, party of one, your table's ready. All she needed now were the pew-pew sounds to really drive home her social awkwardness. Might as well put a bag over her face to complete the look. Luke laughed, but she couldn't tell if he'd been directing his laugh at her or with her. God, she needed to go home, and quick, before she fell too far down the rabbit hole of awkwardness. See you around. Yes, you will, Luke replied. His words caught her off guard, but by the time she had realized how strange they were, she had already made it to her door. Had he been flirting with her? Or was he up to something? Luke had the advantage. He'd pegged her as a Terra the moment he met her, but she had no clue what a Djinn was, or what they were capable of. What could that mean to have one living in such close proximity? And that is the end of chapter 2. So we'll stop there for this week. And that means next week we will move on to chapter 3. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is a fun book. There is a lot of fun character interactions in this one. And you are going to be meeting some new creatures. You've already met a Djinn. And there's quite a few in this one. I try to make each one of the books in this series introduce you to new magical creatures. And this one definitely introduces us to quite a few of them. So let's check comment section, see who's visiting us today. Take down your Christmas decorations. No, damn it. I need some cute, pretty stuff right now. Keeping my holiday cheer up for as long as I possibly can. Well, hello there, all the way in Australia. You guys are from the future. So how is it looking in the future? I hope 2021 is as good of a year as we've been anticipating. Thank you, though, for hanging out and watching and listening to me flub my words, because I can't speak. I hope you're enjoying the book with me. Rebecca says, I'm ready. I hope you are. And we haven't hung out. We need to hang out soon. Sage needs to do her homework. Yes, she does need to do her homework. That's going to be part of this book. Finger guns. Pew, pew, pew. I had so much fun writing that interaction because I wanted her to be just as awkward as humanly possible meeting somebody new. And I hope I nailed that one. There is a scene further on in the book that I cannot wait to get to, and it's a Zack and Sage scene, and the banter between them. I had so much fun writing. I love it when I can get characters to just fire those quips back and forth at each other, so I can't wait. That's a little further in the book. Good. Glad that 2021 is good. I always joke with my Australian friends that they live in the future because the time zones, I don't understand time zones as it is. I get confused just with the time zones in North America. But when you're like a day and a half ahead of us because of the way the time zones work, I can't even math. I can't understand what time it is. I always end up calling my friends either way too late or way too early and going, why aren't you online? Because they're sleeping, like normal people. Sage is so real. Thank you. I'm hoping that she comes across real with all the awkwardness and all of the introspection and all of the screwing up that happens, because let's face it, we all do it. We all screw up. We all make stupid mistakes. We all say the wrong thing and regret it and have to find ways to make up for it. And I really wanted Sage to embody that. So I hope that she is. Thank you for saying that. All right, guys, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I usually like to keep these videos around 20 to 30 minutes, and we're already over that. So I will be back next week with another chapter from A Taste of Your Own Magic. Thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Stay safe. See you next week.